right. Well, hey, we are the Radical Roots Podcast, where we dig deep to reach high to make sure that we're educating and connecting voters to issues and turning that into power. I am your co-host, Parron Baxter.
And I'm your co-host, Raum Sandoval.
And I'm your co-host, Andrew Parrish.
This is our very first episode, and we are going to introduce ourselves, tell you a little bit about what the podcast is going to be about, or the show is going to be about. I think we're going to have multimedia platforms to access this, and what you can expect and why you should listen to us. So we're going to kind of just go through some introductions on the front end, then get into a little bit of why we're here, and then on the back end we'll get into some more recent things for our first mini pod weekend episode that hopefully you all can enjoy.
Yeah, and so this being our first episode, getting used to all the technicals. We got the sound set, everything set. Everyone can hear us out there. I do want to just kind of use this episode to, again, introduce ourselves, talk about our format, what we're going to be talking about in some of today's current events, and what's been going on this past week and today. Parron, why don't you go ahead and do a little bit larger introduction of yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah. So Parron Baxter, I am the current chair of the Union County Democratic Party. I moved to Union County about 3 years ago. Union County, North Carolina, about 3 years ago. Wasn't a lot of left-leaning Democratic Party friendly action. I got involved, and ipso facto, I ended up running the whole show. And now I'm here talking to two good brothers to hopefully educate the folks of not just Union County or North Carolina, but the country, maybe even the world.
All right. Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I'm Andrew Parrish. I love the name of the podcast because radical definitely fits me. I'm definitely radical, a lot of radical views. I've been around politics but all my life. My mom was very involved in politics growing up. So good to link up with you guys, meeting you and sharing our views together.
All right.
And look forward to more.
All right, me too. So I'm Raum Sandoval. I'm new to Union County, new to North Carolina. Recently moved here from Chicago, and I'm in cybersecurity, business intelligence, analytics, so technology, data, all that good stuff, and recently getting more involved with politics, but I've always been paying attention for as long as I can remember, and now I'm stepping it up and getting more involved. So that's going to be a huge theme moving forward, especially with this podcast. I know we connected personally just not even 2 months ago, right? So, Parron, I know you're the chair of the Democratic Party here in the county. We met at a Democratic meeting in November, shortly after the election, and the three of us, we connected. We saw some things we had in common. I know, Parron, some of the things you were saying resonated with Andrew and I, and that's one of the main reasons we're here. I mean, we knew pretty quickly that we were going to do this podcast or link up again, and here we are. And I think that goes to kind of show like the community aspect and kind of the importance going into the next few years here of actually connecting in the community, and what we're doing is taking it to the next level, and especially here in Union County. I hope that this podcast will be a formula for hopefully other red counties where there's Democrats in every county, but and I hope it'll be a good format for black, brown minorities in counties like ours that are predominantly white. I did a lot of canvassing and door knocking this election cycle. I probably knocked over 1,000 doors in Union County, Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. And I talked to a lot of folks, but also knocked on a lot of doors where people didn't pick up. And I think one of the things that we're realizing, at least in my opinion, is that, and maybe some of the party and the old heads will disagree, but I didn't talk to a lot of young folks, meaning anywhere from 18 to 30. Most of the people answering the door were 30 and older. a lot of people necessarily didn't want to have conversations or deep conversations. And I think a lot of people shy away from conversations about politics. They don't necessarily want to, kind of, I guess, embarrass themselves or, kind of have a debate at their doorstep, which is understandable. And I think that differs a lot from, 2008 during Obama. In 2016, in 2020, there was no canvassing, there was no door knocking. It was the middle of COVID. So I think that this medium is growing in importance in terms of, social media, podcasts. People like to hear things. People like to, hear opinions. And I hope people listen to us and they're open to opinions. We're not going to be right about everything. We're going to debate each other. But, I want people to be curious and ask questions, like not just find somebody like a Joe Rogan or their favorite podcaster and just take everything they say for truth, but to actually listen to these opinions, listen to how things are framed, try to discern truth from fact from fiction. So that's why I'm here, and that's what I hope to get out this podcast.
Love it. I love it. And I think it's more than just the idea that whatever the news is of the day. I think people, they are looking for an authentic source, right? And how we metabolize the information and put it back out, and how we react to it, and not just today a train derailed. It's like, hey, that train derailed because they passed that law and these folks are on the wrong. We have to understand culturally why these things are happening. I think for Black people, we're usually afforded the experience of being political, but not the experience of dealing with the policy. Right, and a lot of folks that don't look like us want to deal with the policy, which is always easier to deal with because you have very clear lines, who signed something, who did something. But the politics is what we have to deal with every single day. And that's what people are actually yearning for. And they don't want to be told that the reason you're being oppressed, the reason you don't have fair wages, the reason you don't have good education, the reason you don't have good health care is because of you. And that's what folks are getting from the mainstream media right now. And while a lot of folks, including my mom, she told me this a couple of days ago, she also cut the cord. So this is not a rare phenomenon. Folks are trying to find a more authentic thing. We have a president who he himself coming in is, he's all dolled up in makeup. He does his hair. He's in drag, right? He wears corsets. He wears things that make his body look different. He wears heels and lifts and all these things, right? So he himself is not authentic. The people around him are not authentic. And the lies they want to hold on to about white supremacy are also inauthentic. So I think people are yearning for people to give them a real, from the source, from the hose, understanding of why these things are happening and what we can do to fight it and to resist it at every single level. So I'm super excited about this show.
All right. So some of the things that we plan to cover on a weekly basis, we're going to see how often we have this recurring podcast, and maybe it'll turn into some other mini shows things. But some of the things we plan to talk about are national politics. Whatever's going on, not necessarily what the media is covering, mass media, mainstream media is covering. Usually there's a lot of shiny objects, right, where people are focused on the wrong things. So we want to focus on some things that we believe is important, and try to help shape the conversation. There's a lot of good sources out there that I like to follow right now from a national perspective. The Midas Touch Network, Heather Cox, and I'm sure you guys might have a few, but ultimately, we want to cover some of those things. Do you have some of your favorite sources from a national politics level? I stopped watching MSNBC, so I stopped watching CNN a long time ago. And Fox News is if I want to see, sometimes if I want to see the spin and the propaganda, and then right. I turn on those type of sources. I do think that there's value in that, but
yeah.
And then from a local level, we're here in Union County, we're here in North Carolina. There's things that are happening locally. The county commissioner, the county school board, they're meeting on a regular basis. They're having these meetings. I don't think there's a lot of coverage. There's definitely not a lot of coverage on social media. I've seen people, some of our elected officials, start to leverage social media more on the North Carolina and the state. However, Union County is still, in my opinion, I've only been here for a few months, but it's one of the things that I haven't seen much information come out of Union County, and I think that that's going to be important. We always talk about the importance of local politics compared to national. A lot of people they focus on state, they focus on national, and they wait till it's the day to vote. It's going to be important to pay attention to these things. People are moving in silence, and the elected officials are moving in silence, and they're doing whatever they want, right? So we want to shed a light on that. We want to put it in a medium that people enjoy, and from our perspective, right?
Yeah.
Life in a red state. We'll talk about that. Parron, I don't know if you have any thoughts or comments on being in a red state.
Well, I mean, also Andrew, because you're from Union County, correct?
No, but I am from a red. I do grow up in the red state. I spent some time in Georgia, so very red.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, we're still getting to know each other, folks. So clearly, that was a question.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be getting to know each other on the show, which I think will be good.
Yeah.
And I think, these type of conversations, I think it's good, right? Even if it's online, making relationships online, Facebook groups, your neighbors.
That's right.
Precincts, which we'll talk about a little bit here. Mm-hmm. And your counties and everything. It's really going to be important to make those type of relationships. And just to go on a little bit of a tangent, I never imagined myself doing podcasts. I never imagined I signed up to be a precinct chair this upcoming year in 2025. Mm-hmm. Never really imagined myself doing that. So there's things that I'm doing. Parron, one of the things you talked about, I think in your meeting in November, I think you said get comfortable being uncomfortable. Can you tell us a little bit about what you meant when you said that?
Yeah, I think for myself but before I became the chair, I was a bit of probably an online political person, right? As we've seen, folks that can get on the Instagrams and the Twitters and do hardcore responses, real-time responses, posting real-time things. But then when you get involved, you realize that the Democratic Party itself, in my mind, I thought was a well-oiled machine, right? All I got to do is step into this multi-billion-dollar, million-dollar conglomerate, and I'm like a branch manager, if you will. And what it taught me was that there is a lot of work that needs to get done. And to get work done, you have to then identify what work needs to be done and push people through that. And to push people through that is some of the most uncomfortable work, right? And then not only is that hard, but also for those people, it's also uncomfortable. Because what they've all experienced is either that there's a good team or a bad team, or both teams are bad, and I don't want anything to do with any of that. So you're trying to really reshape the behavior and patterns of people who have been told and conditioned to not talk about these things, Raum. Like the folks that you're knocking on the doors of those 1,000 people you're talking about, they've all been conditioned. We've all been conditioned. The three of us have been conditioned not to talk about these things. So yeah. I'm asking people who listen to our show and who engage with us on social media or in person is to ask the question.
Yeah.
You don't say, hey, I don't know. What is that? What's going on? Because the more we stay curious about why these things are happening, the faster we can get to an answer that helps more people out. So I really want people to sit with that uncomfortability. The only way to have political growth is to push past your uncomfortability. And that's the only way we get better, right? If you want to get bigger muscles in the gym, you got to be uncomfortable and pick up heavier weights, right? This is the only way you get stronger. If you want to get more information, you have to read books you have never read before. So these are all the same things, right? We're asking people to go through a transformative process to become better on the other side. And I'll leave you with this, or leave it with this. Maya Angelou had a video from like the 80s. And she was talking about how we're trying to educate white people at the end of the day. That's what all this stuff's about. But her point was this, and I think this applies towards misogyny, sexism, homophobia, any ismogeny or phobia, right? Is that what she said was to this interviewer, what we're asking you is to give up some of that ignorance. Just give up a little bit of that ignorance. That level of, I don't know, I'm just a stupid person, I don't know. We're asking you to be curious. We're asking you to dig in and then to sit in that. And if the person that told you whatever you're challenging isn't willing to change those things or course correct, what are you willing to do about that? Are you willing to get uncomfortable with maybe a friend, a significant other, a relative? That's what this moment is requiring of all of us. So anybody that's listening, please stick with us. But yes, get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, I know. Also, knocking doors was something that I was nervous doing the first time and kind of awkward, and you get used to it after you talk to a few people, and then you learn how to craft your message and get people to open up a little bit more. And yeah, I mean, I think that's something that I think just one of the themes that I think is going to be important for everyone, especially Democrats, over the next few years, is to also just step it up a notch, right? So if you aren't a voter, you haven't voted, plan to vote. Figure out what's going on, who you're voting for. If you are a voter, you show up every 2 years, and there's maybe sometimes even more.
There's an election
or even
every
less,
year.
right?
There's an election.
Yeah, there is an election every year. Thank you. You know what? You might have to get more involved. You might need to actually show up to these meetings or talk to your neighbors that might be uncomfortable. Sometimes you're avoiding conflict. If you've been involved, you might now need to be a precinct captain, right? And if you've been a precinct captain, you might need to run for office. And that's just kind of where we're at. We're just going to have to take it and step it up a notch and really just prepare for the years ahead. And really, for me personally, I volunteered in 2008 for the Obama campaign, making phone calls to Nevada and North Carolina. But in between then, I didn't really, get involved. I didn't stay involved to the detriment in 2012. I think a lot of people stayed home. They didn't vote. And they just kind of, we were on cruise control. And really 2010, he had 2 years of, I think, a supermajority. But, I donated and things like that. But I think if a lot of us had stayed more involved, heavily involved over the past few years, we'd be in a much better position today. But now it's go time. It's do or die time. I don't think we really have any more time to spare and wait and see. Wait and see is not going to work any longer. Yeah. So, the other thing is, economic empowerment is something I like to talk about. I think we're going to talk about in this podcast over the course of the podcast.
It's always important, yeah.
For me, what that means is spending people who support me and people like me and the things that I believe in. That might be a blue business, a black-owned business, brown-owned business, minority-owned, women-owned businesses. Seek those out. And that's how I like to spend my money. I like to use my wallet. I think a good example, Costco. Costco came out this week and they said their stakeholders were like, cut your DEI. And they said, we're not cutting DEI. That is part of our business. And I thought that was a great stand, especially with all these other businesses capitulating to the incoming Trump administration. If you remember, I think 2019, it was about 2019, 2020, all these businesses, Target was the first, and they said Black Lives Matter, and that was the slogan, and it seemed like everyone was on the DEI wave, and everyone, now you just look at it, it's like, oh, that was just, that was what was in, that was what was cool, and then these businesses that jumped on that DEI bandwagon are now hopping off in mass, and to me, that's weak of them, and so I stopped spending. If I see you doing stuff like that, I'm not spending my money there. And, I think economic development in general within these communities, I'm from Chicago, within black communities, there was a lot of, as of late, there's been more and more investments put into predominantly black communities, which I think is important, right? Because it gives people opportunity. It gives people opportunity to have something to look forward to, to make money, and the people that actually spend the most money in this country are black people. That I think it's a five trillion or something like that. Is like there's so much money there's so much of the economy that we can control with our wallets, and this extends to Democrats and this extends to causes you're in favor of. So that's something also I want to emphasize over the course of this podcast.
No question.
Last is humanness, man. And mental health. I think a lot of people, a lot of folks, including us, we haven't really talked about this much, but after the election, I mean, I was disappointed. I was sad. I was depressed. I'm not a person that I would describe myself as, going to depress or have like depressive disorders or go into states like that very often. But yeah, I mean, I was there. I mean, and I think, I was trying to fight it. That's what I do. That's what a lot of us do as men. We fight through it. And then after a while, I was like, all right, this is what it is. We're nothing we can change about it, right? And I think once that happened, and I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna turn my anxiousness into action. And I think that's what part of this is like it's an outlet. I want to get the word out. I want to spread the word. But I think it's important to be aware of those things, of what you're feeling and in general, but especially following this election and what's happening with what I'm calling is Trump's shock and awe campaign, right? They're just day after day battering us with all kinds of crazy headlines. We're talking about buying Greenland and conquering Panama and all kinds of craziness.
Canada is the 51st state.
And ridiculing his governor. I mean, there's so much really ridiculing the president of Canada and calling him the governor. I mean, there's all these silly things, and there's so much. The cabinet is full of characters, people who are going to tear down these institutions. They're there to actually break them up. The Department of Education is being run by McMahon, WWE. Come on, wrestling. I mean, then we got, and she was fired from her job in education before 1 year. And then you got the FBI, and you have the DOJ, and you have all of these things. And it's just going to take a toll on a lot of people mentally. And there's just some things that we can't control, and we have to accept that. But there's things that we absolutely have to fight and stand for and get in the way of and hold these people accountable. And I don't think it's just going to be Democrats. I think it's going to be Republicans and Trumpsters that voted for Trump that they're realizing that they've made a mistake. I see these stories and I see them more and more. We'll see how much this arises. But at the end of the day, like, Republicans have to hold their elected officials accountable too, right? Because if they're not doing that and we're the only ones doing it, it's just going to be hard.
I hear you on that. I've learned, and I've now poured through enough history to understand holding your breath for white, conservative, racist voters to turn on their demagogue is, I'm just saying, I hear you. I'm all about optimism, but I don't want to conflate optimism with hope.
Yes.
Those are two different things.
Yeah.
Optimism is, and that's what a lot of our palm-colored people, they want us to focus on just the optimism, but I find hope in talking to people through reality, right? That meeting y'all came to, us talking to the audience right now, our posts we do, our organizing that we do, those hard conversations you were having on the doorstep. That's what gives me hope in humanity. Because one thing, I'll just side up here. One thing Kamala Harris did during her campaign in the early days, which did cause some concern to me, I didn't say anything, when she was talking about joy. This is a campaign about joy. Y'all remember that?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
She was saying joy. And a lot of neoliberal white folks who are they're like, oh, this is great. She's the antithesis of all of Trump's doom and gloom and his operation of chaos. Now the problem with that is folks who are marginalized. That doesn't always work. Having joy without anything, I was telling somebody while during the campaign, you can't have joy without justice. You can't have joy without justice. Because if you don't have if you have joy without justice, that is pandering. That is literally pandering to the people who require justice to move forward in a political realm, right? Because we're not here to listen to Beyonce or whoever the case may be. I'm using that as
Megan Thee Stallion.
Megan Thee Stallion or whatever. I'm here to say what foundational change are you going to make to this system, which is making me hopeless. And so that's why I just want to put a little pin in that. We'll touch on this as we continue on, but that really put a hair up my ass. That whole just joy. This campaign's about joy. Girl, we don't need joy. We need solutions. We need straight talk. We need these institutions and these laws to change. Period. Then we'll be happy. Then we'll have joy.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I've long considered myself moderate centrist. I think that I think coming into this election, I was like, well, yeah, I think Republicans they're not going to vote for Trump. There's a set of Republicans that aren't going to vote for Trump, and even I see you guys like post, and I'm like, oh, like let me clutch my pearls a little bit. Like they got to calm down. They're making people feel uncomfortable. Yeah, I think I've learned my lesson, right? So, and I think we talked a couple weeks ago, about Joe and Mika, Morning Joe, and they're former Republicans. At least Joe is, and I used to watch them a little bit, and I was watching them and thinking, man, they're talking about Republicans and Republicans aren't going to vote for Trump, and here I am like, oh yeah, we got this. Like we only need a few percentage, 2 to 5%. We got this. Oh, and then yeah, it didn't happen, right? So trying to move to the center and trying to move and capture Republicans and Kamala Harris talking about joy and also like bombing the shit out of other countries and being the strongest
most lethal fighting force.
Thank you, strongest lethal fighting force. Because I was like, when she said that, I was like, what are you? What? Oh, I was like, okay, I guess that's the plan to loop in Republicans because I did not expect that. I'll tell you that much when she said that. And all those things, the Cheneys, putting Liz Cheney out there.
Wrong. The craziest stat for the Cheneys. She campaigned more with Liz Cheney in the month of October than she did with Liz and Dick Cheney than she did with AOC or than she did with a progressive person. She campaigned more with Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney than she did with anybody that would be considered progressive or even moderate by those estimations.
Yeah, and looking back, I mean, I think I think she ran a great campaign. I think she had a mission, and I don't think that there's not a lot she could have done better, but I think a lot of the strategy was we tried it. We know now that I don't think that I know Andrew, and this is something I actually wanted to ask Andrew about. He said that she should Kamala Harris should be the chair of the DNC. My thought is that she's established herself as a moderate centrist. She's too far to the right. I don't think she can change her image right to what the Democratic Party needs today. I do think of somebody like AOC. I do think young blood. We can name off some others. Now, I'm not saying for the DNC necessarily, but just in general, some leaders within the Democratic Party. Need some fresh blood. We need to move to the left to where the base truly is. Andrew, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, when she first came out, she had a lot of fire, a lot of enthusiasm around her. There was a lot of joy. People were happy coming out. A lot of people weren't going to vote because of Biden. So when he dropped out, she got in. There was a lot of people wanting to be around her. She did have a lot of drive. I think we need to try to recapture some of that momentum that we had that was lost when she started going more to the right, trying to be more moderate. So we need to bring her back left and let her refocus on that, and just recapture that moment, that momentum that she was in. I think her being the face of the Democratic Party after getting 70 million votes is not a bad move at all. I think that's kind of fitting, because a lot of people want her to be president, and that gives you a little something, a little small victory.
Yeah, well, I supported her 2020 campaign, and I obviously supported her 2024. Hey, I was feeling the joy. I'm an optimistic person, right? Like, for me, I think I was at the Obama rally here in Charlotte for Harris, and I was volunteering. I was getting people signed up for canvassing. Like, I was feeling it, man. Like, I was feeling the energy. Unfortunately, that's not going to be enough alone. So we'll see how it goes, and it's something we'll definitely talk about. Yeah. So again, kind of going to, I guess, what we can expect from. Let's talk about some current events, right? So
yeah.
Which one do you want to start us off with?
I think let's start with the mess. Let's start with the mess, right? I'm sure folks out there have heard about the most recent nonsense out of the Republican right and their inability to organize a 2-car parade. And these folks have been at each other's throats over immigration, and we're seeing. There's a post from a gentleman named Siddharth. This went viral. He is, I'm assuming, some South Asian, Indian descent or Pakistani man who said that as a South Asian Republican, he's really questioning the Republican Party and their stance on visas and blah, blah, blah. And this is something that is so interesting to me because we have Elon Musk, who is the heir to an emerald mine in South Africa, apartheid, stealing of land and resources. He's an heir to that. Also, one generation away from an actual Nazi. That doesn't get brought up a lot in the Elon Musk, ethos story and mythos story. But yeah, his grandfather. His dad was talking. The clip is online. Y'all, anybody don't believe me. Believe his dad, who said that his father was a Nazi in Germany. Do what you want me to do about that. I'm just saying. So you have Elon Musk coming from South Africa, right? Not African coming from South Africa, a colonizer coming from South Africa. Vivek Ramaswamy, who was also running for president during the 2024 primary, who flamed out and was basically just a mouthpiece for Trump the entire time. I think Trump is amazing. There's always been, I think, a lot of people who are white and progressive. They think that, well, why does Vivek Ramaswamy support the Republican Party? Why does Elon Musk, who's an immigrant, support the Republican Party when they're very much racist and very much anti-immigrant? And this is a misnomer to how we look at race as a construct in this country, because at the end of the day, there's always been a negotiation for minorities to approximate themselves to whiteness as long as they can hate black people too. That's always the game. And look, I will hate black people as much as you want me to hate black people, as long as you take care of me. This happens, I don't care if it was the Italians, I don't care if it was the Irish, I don't care if it was the Asian groups, I don't care if it was Latino groups. That is what this country is built on. In fact, that's why there were certain indigenous tribes that owned us during the Trail of Tears. What's not talked about was there was over 2,000 enslaved people owned by those indigenous tribes. This is the history that we don't have to understand, that we have to understand that is informing this moment. So anyway, I say all that to say, they're upset that Elon Musk now and Vivek Ramaswamy are supporting the H-1B system, a visa system, which allows folks from predominantly Asia and India to come over and do high-tech jobs. Those are usually high-paying jobs. Well, your old racist whites were not having that. They were like, this is crazy. They went right into calling Vivek Ramaswamy. There's a AI picture of him wearing a 7-Eleven polo shirt. They're saying, "Well, go back behind the counter." All calling him Apu from The Simpsons. All these things. Elon Musk calling him, that he's the first lady, and all of these things. So they're at loggerheads right now. And I'm enjoying it. I'm watching. I'm eating my popcorn because at the end of the day, we didn't want this for you, Mr. Crazy Stupid White Person who voted for this. We wanted you to go to a doctor. We wanted you to go and have access to education. We wanted you to have clean air. But no, you wanted to own the libs. And now we're seeing a civil war, something we haven't seen. Now, we knew this was going to happen. We didn't expect it to happen so early. And I think it is a prelude to what we can expect in 2025.
Speaking of the visas, I think the H-1B ones, Elon came from Canada actually on one of those and overstayed as originally, so that's why he supports it, because he benefited from it himself.
Yeah, and supposedly he didn't even. Supposedly that's the story, but they're saying that he didn't even come here on the H-1B. He came here on a student visa and didn't even go to school. Right. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, there's no one to. I mean, okay, like if he did, like who's going to investigate? Who's going to prosecute him? No one.
Right.
So it doesn't matter at this point. Other than pointing out the hypocrisy pointing out hypocrisy is something we'll do a lot of, but I think MAGA and the Republicans, they at the end of the day, like they won't. First off, they're not going to care that he immigrated illegally, and second off, it's mainly because he's white. And if it was Vivek that immigrated illegally, or not Vivek. What's his name? Sharam Krishan.
No, the guy.
He's the actual guy that Trump, because Vivek's from here, but
right.
He's the actual guy that Trump has nominated to be the AI czar or whatever he's calling him. And he's not from here. But if there was, it's not the same. You don't get the same luxury when you're non-white. You don't get the benefits of breaking the law and looking the other way. And I think there's a lot of Indian Americans that are learning that in this moment, including elected Republicans, and they're seeing the racism on display. I don't know why. I mean, maybe it's just because, for Indian Americans, there hasn't been a lot of vitriol directed towards them directly. But the racism's always been there. It's just hasn't. And same with it's very similar to the Puerto Ricans, right? Who are Americans. There wasn't really a lot of outrage until the Puerto Ricans were called out directly, right? So I think a lot of the thing is we're not, until you're being called out or until it affects you directly, we're kind of lackadaisical and not really caring. That's a problem, right? If we just keep doing that and wait until it gets to the next group, until it's our group, then we're in trouble. But it's been really interesting, this whole H-1B thing. I saw something else where Elon, he's out saying I need these people for high tech, for these tech jobs. And Trump's like, yeah, I'm using the H-1B. My resorts, my properties are filled with them. He's not talking about that. He's talking about the people who are taking care of the.
That's an H-2 visa. See, Trump's so stupid. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. He's just like, I think it's H-1B. They're all not from here. They are brown skin. Those are on the H-2 visa. People who come.
That's all he knows.
Yeah, it's seasonal, temporary work to chefs. Who do landscaping, who do pool work. They're on an H-2 visa, but he's so ignorant, he doesn't know. But the thing is, when all you have is privilege, you don't have to know anything.
Right.
Yeah, I have a theory, and my thought is that kicking the immigrants out, the ones they're targeting, the Venezuelans, the Mexicans, whoever's at the border, right, that are doing manual labor. Low-wage manual labor jobs. I think he's starting to look like he wants to kick them out to make room for Americans, white Americans, black Americans. Maybe these are the black jobs he's talking about, right? Because somebody's got to do them, and it's just confusing because on the flip side, these high-tech jobs they're talking about. Within America, there is a shortage. I'm in cybersecurity space. I'm in tech. There is a shortage of skill sets within Americans, and I've always said it's a problem. It's an issue, right? We need to, and I've preached a lot about this. We need to train cybersecurity. We need to mentor. We need to get people up to the levels that they need to be in order to fill these jobs. And I don't think there's anything wrong with immigrant. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with immigrants. They're a nation of immigrants. Like bringing over immigrants and making immigrants want to come here to make America continue to be great. There's nothing wrong with that, but Americans also need to continue to get training, continue to get education. If we're cutting down the Department of Education, we're cutting down education in elementary schools, cutting down STEM. We're cutting down funding for, federal funding for college, all these things, and making it harder. It makes no sense. So, it should be both. It should be both.
I saw this tweet, and it's really saying what you're saying, Ron. I'm going to read it. It's from a lady named Sherry Jacobus, and this is her tweet. We can't hire Americans because they aren't educated enough. So let's obliterate the Department of Education, keep college student loan debt astronomical so higher ed is out of reach for normies, make teachers use their own money to pay for classroom supplies, and get rid of Wikipedia. That is how conservatives think. Like, we need to hire Americans, but also destroy the Department of Education. Don't let people have access to it. Let people be under this debt peonage, as W.E.B. Du Bois used to call it. Like, that is this whole thing. And for the fact that black folks were starting to get education, which is why there is for-profit colleges, and why there is a bar exam, and why there is an LSAT, and why there are all these extra layers added into the educational system, it just proves that white supremacy will always end up hurting themselves. And now all of this is a very hundreds-year-long making. What did Malcolm X say? The chicks gonna come home to roost. And them chicks are coming home right now. And now I'm trying to figure out, well, this is crazy, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, it's crazy. But hatred was never logical. We have to stop projecting our morality onto people who don't have, as Kwame Ture used to say, nonviolence only works if your enemy has a conscience. America doesn't have a conscience. This is why when the Citizens United happened, they said, corporations are people. Corporations don't have consciousness. They don't have feelings. They don't have fears, right? They're a group of people who work to suppress the wages and exploit the labor of who's ever working for their organization. Now, of course, we get the Costco's, the Ben and Jerry's out there, but most of them are all playing the same game. And they don't want people who will challenge them. They don't want folks who will say, boss, I don't know, we need to hire some more black people. All I see is a bunch of folks who look like you around here. And our product that we're putting out on the marketplace is not appealing to as many people as possible. And we want to make that money, right? So that just proves the ineptitude of the culture. And to a degree, what Vivek said in his one tweet, I didn't see myself agreeing with Vivek Ramaswamy in 2024 at all. But his one tweet where he says this country does care about the jock more than they care about the math Olympiad. They do care about the prom queen more than they care about I forget the other thing he said.
It's like screech.
There's a level of truth. There's truth in that. Right? Now, It's purposefully done. Right? All these systems get outcomes that they were supposed to get. So people are like, healthcare is broken, and the education system is broken, and policing is broken. These systems, the outcomes these systems get, are the exact outcomes that they wanted to get when they created these systems. That's what we have to understand. And when we start there, you can start pulling the threads and be like, hold on, wait a minute. These things are all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks for that one. So I'm gonna let's try to round this out here. We have one other topic of the day.
But look out for more craziness, folks. There'll be more craziness. This is not the last time. This is just a shorter episode, but get ready for more craziness.
Yeah, we'll see.
4 years worth.
Yeah,
4 years.
And honestly, we got 3 weeks to. This is the calm before the storm. It seems crazy. Now it's going to get crazy. This is the time for you to regroup yourselves, plan, prepare.
Right.
Find your peace. Know how to find your peace because immediately following the election, I remember people just being like, I'm sitting out, I'm not doing nothing. I was like, look, I'm only out for me now. I don't care about anybody else. I'm coming around to like just to who I am, right? Like I know that's not realistic. I mean, primarily I'm putting me and my family first, but
right.
You're gonna have to stay involved. But my point is there's a lot to talk about, and this H-1B visa thing has been very interesting because we know it's going to be a circus. This administration, it just remains to be seen how much of a circus and what MAGA truly can take. I think at the end of the day, they'll get in line and just follow whatever Trump says, and all of a sudden they're going to be for H-1B for Indian immigrants and all kind of immigrants, and I don't think they'll admit they're wrong, but we'll see. I think that Kool-Aid is strong.
The ones that will suffer will be the H-1B recipients. They're the ones that are going to be stigmatized in the streets. They're the ones that are going to be chastised at work. They're the ones that are going to be harmed through all this, and that's what's sad.
And that's a good point. I mean, you're right. I mean, in a lot of ways, they now have a target on their back. It's almost like the Haitians that were, just completely.
We're very much going back to a show me your papers time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no way to determine who has the visa, who doesn't. They only see skin color. They think that, hey, you're Indian.
Are you
Haitian?
Haitian?
Visa.
Right? Are you eating cats and dogs? Are you the Kung Flu? Are you an H1? I mean, right? These new classifications that we're all kind of normalizing to be like, well, are you that? And I'm not saying us three, but I'm talking about white America, people who hold power, right? But it's not just that. It's going to be into the trans thing, right? Who's checking genitalia? This is when you have.
Don't tell me this bathroom.
Right. When you have a society that is built on self-surveillance. You are already fascist. I think people are waiting for the goose stepping and the armbands, and they got the uniforms. The uniforms are the red hats. There's a reason why fascists need uniforms. It's because they need everybody to be in alignment. They need everybody to play the binary role. How can I quickly identify? Yes, how can I quickly identify that you're on my side? This is why they hate the LGBTQ community. This is why they hate people of color, because we express ourselves differently. And that is totally against. They have to have one color, one thing. And queer people are like, hey, I like this color. I like that. Black people, I like Juneteenth. I like black, red, and white. I don't like the red, white, and blue. All of these things, they just mess up their worldview. And that is why they need a uniform. That's why the Germans had brown shirts and red armbands. That's why Mussolini had black shirts. That's why G.K.L. Smith had the silver shirts here in America. That's why Trump has the red hat. All of these things are uniform. And it's meant to send a signal out to everybody else to say, are you with us or are you against us?
Yeah. And, well, there's a lot to take in because that's a lot. There's a lot of realities that will set in the next few months. And that raises a great point, especially with Tom Homan coming in. The borders are, I don't even know what he's on the border. And
I mean, he was the reason Obama was the border in chief. He was the reason that was the thing. You know, I mean, people forget Tom Homan was hired under Barack Obama.
Yeah, and I've got a picture of Tom Homan in here, I think. There we go. Put him on the screen there. But he had on like this, I don't know, you can't see, but like this like brown green suit that he's wearing, and I'm like thinking like, man, that's gonna be the outfit for these guys. And he was talking about if you're not with us, get out of the way. And to me, the way what's that?
Share it again.
It's sharing on the on the stream. But he's saying like if you're not with us, get out the way. And the way that I perceived it is like, I think he's going to be deputizing and on the border, and he's going to be on the border giving these people the go ahead to ask people their papers and say like, who are you, and citizens arrest. And I think that's what's ahead of us. And it's a slippery slope now. And, as you said, any brown person, like, they're gonna look at Indian Americans. You look Indian, you might look Mexican.
The thing about a bigot does not split hairs.
Yeah, exactly. They'll look at me. They're like, "What are you? Mexican? You Mexican? Indian?
Card,
Black?
what is that?
What are you
Like? What you got? What's that?
Yeah, I'm like, so yeah, that's what's ahead. All right,
also,
so
not just on the border. We're here in Union County, North Carolina. We have something called constitutional sheriffs. There's about 300 sheriff's departments around the country that believe that they are above the federal law, right? These are the people that will say that there's certain things they will not enforce, right? They weren't going to enforce the masking during COVID. They weren't going to enforce, non-discrimination. They're not going to take away anybody's gun that was beating their wife, right? But they will enforce rounding people up, right? It's very selective, but we have that here in Union County for sure.
I did not know that, so
yes.
Now I know.
Those racist ass sheriffs you see, absolutely. I've been on meetings trying to get these folks out, but they run on this stuff. And thanks to your point earlier, since we don't have any local media talking about it, what it does for people who don't follow this, who are of the majority group, of the dominant class, of the oppressive class of this county, is they think everything's okay.
Mm-hmm.
They don't realize the degradation of the county because it's never being told to them. And all they're hearing is that you're the best, and anybody that doesn't like you thinks that you're racist because they're racist. And that's why it continues on. And what's scary about that is they're going to have a rude awakening when a sheriff kicks in their neighbor's door or kicks in their door. And they're going to be like, what's wrong with Sheriff Johnson? Oh, are you harboring some illegals? We heard you were harboring some illegals. Like, that's my son-in-law. He's Mexican. Oh, no. He's got to... What they gonna do?
Yeah,
especially the ones who voted for him.
Folks will have to wake up real quick, or not. Also, I don't have faith.
Will they wake up?
It's about optimism, hope, and faith. Faith is the third thing. I don't got faith. I don't have faith that these people all of a sudden are going to turn this leaf, because again, we can look back at the '60s, the civil rights movement. It wasn't a lot of them.
Well, one thing I will say is, yeah, I understand your skepticism about that. One thing I will say, a lot of people I talk to and neighbors who are voted Republican, I won't call them MAGA. I don't know how MAGA they are, but a lot of them are ill-informed. They literally don't know what much is going on outside of Trump's whole bravado, and they didn't know what was happening at the... Well, governor, yeah. I mean, a lot of people, I knew a lot of people who actually said they wouldn't vote for Mark Robinson here, but beyond that, they didn't really know any of the candidates. They didn't know many of the issues, and I do think there's an education piece, and really it's all in the margins here. So who we reach, but I think a lot of it is important, is informing Democrats, informing people who are self-described allies and who are actual allies. So that they can spread the word, and it really is. It's not like it's just all these people are just going to change their mind, flip the switch, and no longer wave the red hats and all that stuff. But I still think there's a lot of people who are not MAGA and still vote red, and I don't know if that'll ever change. But
what's the difference?
To me, I mean, at this point, well. No, at this point, not much. But
and I would say this. And I'll talk to my mom about it after the election, or the day Daniel Penny went to the Army Navy game. My mom came over, and we had a very similar conversation to this. And it was about some girl at her job. My mom's a nurse. Some other nurse that voted Trump, but she's not. She doesn't go to rallies type. I'm assuming the same type of people you're talking about. Someone that you can have a conversation with and can be a bit agreeable with. And I said, Mom, but Trump and J.D. Vance invited Daniel Penny to sit with them publicly, and then they revered him, saying we need more people like this. I said Jordan Neely was an example of how the state failed people, regardless of your race. How governments fail. The government failed Jordan Neely, right? That's why he was homeless. That's why he was hungry. That's why he was asking for help. That means that your institutions are failing its people it's supposed to serve, first and foremost. Secondly, I said, Ma, do you know what they found in Jordan Neely's pocket after they pulled his dead body out of the subway? It wasn't a knife. It wasn't a gun. It was a muffin. A muffin. That is who your friend at work gave power to. A man that revered a man that killed Jordan Neely, who was armed with a muffin. So, I like to ask, what's the difference? Why am I saying these people are so different, but they give the actual power that will allow the boot to be put on all three of our necks and our children's necks? Why are they so different?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can ask that question. Andrew, Ron, what y'all think?
I really don't think there's a difference. I think the main difference is some of them sit back and let it happen, and some of the ones that are participating. It's probably really the only difference.
Yeah, if this point the question is probably rhetorical because it's, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if they think differently. If they're still voting for the people who are putting us in these positions and allowing this to happen, I don't know if it really matters. I don't know if those minds can be swayed. Right now, I guess it's obvious why you're pessimistic about that, and I can understand that for sure.
But it's always been this way, though. I think about a guy named Primo Levi, who he was in a concentration camp in Dachau, and he ended up committing suicide after he escaped the concentration camp because of all the apathy that he's seen around the world. Because we can't forget, and a lot of us do forget, that a lot of people didn't care what Hitler was doing, the Jewish people and German people. Again, Dwight D. Eisenhower sent refugee ships back to Europe. Several. In fact, and Otto Frank, and Frank's father, Dwight D. Eisenhower sent him back to Europe. We don't learn these things. But Primo Levi, who committed suicide after leaving a concentration camp, he has a famous quote that says, "Monsters are few. Atrocities happen because of the indifference of the many who refuse to ask questions." So contextualizing all that with this person's good, Trump is the badness, we got to stop that.
Yeah, and to your point. I mean, I don't know if there is waking up the consciousness of a lot of people, because it reminds me of Aaron Bushnell, the soldier who self-immolated to put spotlight on Israel and Palestine. Luigi. I mean, one of the reasons he did it was to put spotlight on the healthcare industry. There's got to be something. It's that violence. I mean, you said what is the quote you said earlier? You said you can't speak to people without a consciousness.
Well, the commentary said that nonviolence as a response to oppression only works if your opponent has a conscience. Mm-hmm. And then he followed that sentence up with, America has no conscience.
Yeah.
But then I expanded that to the corporations have no conscience. Mm-hmm. Right? Like we're a family, and look at our ERGs and DEI teams. Look, they will throw us all away.
Right. They already are.
They already are. So we got to stop this whole I'm not saying, all I'm saying is we have to start taking people at their actions and not their words.
Yeah. All right, guys. Let's go to our last topic of the day. Good discussion. Great discussion. Yeah. We can always talk for hours. So
this was a short one.
Yeah, this was supposed to be a short one. So today, former President Jimmy Carter, 100 years old, passed away. What do you have to say about that, Parron?
I was going to say, I think there's a moment in history where we have to, or the country kind of remembers presidents and they revere them. And I will say all presidents are war criminals. Every single one is a war criminal. That's just to run an empire, you have to commit war crimes. You have to commit crimes against humanity. Now, there's a gradient. There's a gradient. And I think some of the things that James Earl Carter did was, he did a few things that moved us in the right direction. He put solar panels on top of the White House. He was fighting for more unionization within working. He was fighting to make sure that we had education in this deep South right? He talked about the dog whistle politics of the day, of states' rights and that rhetoric and the racism behind it. He said this, right? And we can't forget that even though running this empire, you will automatically, even if Kamala Harris would have won, she would be the next war criminal, right? Joe Biden is a war criminal. Obama's a war criminal. We just have to, I didn't make that happen. It just is what it is. But I do think that we can appreciate when someone is trying to move it in a different direction, even if it's just by a few degrees, right? And dare I say, one of the only presidents who has a book written about the apartheid in Palestine decades ago, and he was challenged about that decades ago. And he's like, well, I mean, the thing about apartheid is, and I think he was quoted with this, is that apartheid, you can see it from space. You can see apartheid from space no matter where it is. You can see the good people live over here and the bad people live over there, and it's kept in order by violence. So that's something that I don't think anybody has courage, political courage, not just presidents that are still living, but anybody in Congress to say that. So I just want to say, 100 years is a long time. I told my wife about that earlier today. She's like, "What?" I'm like, 100. I mean, yeah, you're gonna go after 100, hopefully. Hopefully he'll be remembered in a much more gracious light than H.W. Bush, W. Bush, Reagan for damn sure, because he was one of the last ones, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Jimmy Carter, rest in peace. He unfortunately had to see Trump win, but fortunately he will not have to see for the next 4 years.
Maybe he knew something.
Well, Trump was on him last week over Panama, right? He gave away the canal for $1, so he's going in on Jimmy, but I think Jimmy obviously led a long life, and so congrats, well,
right.
Yeah, 100's nothing to blink. Like that's amazing.
He divested from his peanut farm. Trump won't divest from nothing. Okay, Trump he wants more stuff with his name on it. He is for sale. He's telling people I'm for sale. So
yeah, ethics. Yeah, I think to your point, I think he was an ethical, or at least tried to be morally, and I think Democrats in general try to do that. Now, are they great at it? Not always, but it's better than the alternative, right? Where being morally and ethically corrupt and empty is not helpful. So, before we round out and close the show, is there anything else you guys want to bring up, or are we going to save it all for the next episode?
I just say, folks, please make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow us. We're just getting off the ground, so we're just still, still knocking the rust off and seeing how the show's shaping. But we want your feedback. We want your recommendations, or if a guest you want to come on the show, we'll try to reach out. Well, I got a few strings I could pull. I'm not saying I'm Mr. Big Time here, but folks that have seen us starting to loosely promote this, they're like, okay, I want to be involved. These are folks that have some sway. So hopefully we can bring some folks that you all might want to hear, and we can ask some good questions and help really educating people from the source, not through some billionaire-owned media conglomerate, but from people that are actually living right now. They're trying to fight for a future tomorrow. Yes,
absolutely. Like, comment, subscribe, follow, whatever it is. We're going to be figuring out all the technical details over the next few episodes, and we're going to continue to spread the word. We appreciate you spreading the word and being patient with the technicals and finding us on the platforms. But we will be posting clips, trying to stay engaged. This is my first go round at being a creator, doing webcasts, podcasts, all that good stuff. So I'm having fun with it, and we appreciate you listening. We appreciate you following. We appreciate you supporting. Hopefully this turns into more actions, more of a movement, both here in Union County, North Carolina, and nationally. We'll just see where it goes. Otherwise, We're just three guys having a good time talking, and we're gonna do it regardless. So,
right.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a good night.
Andrew got something?
No, I'm just looking forward to see where Elon Musk is going to be sitting during the inauguration. Since he's really the president after all. So,
well,
he's going to be speaking.
He's got to be the one holding up the
Bible.
The Bible. All right. Thank you very much. Take care.
All right, folks. Be good.
All right.